Imagine waking up one morning and feeling that inexplicable weight in your chest, the kind of heaviness you can't quite name. You roll out of bed, look around at the life you've built, your job, your home, the people you know, and yet something gnaws at you. You're not starving, you're not in danger, and by most measures you should be content. But deep inside there's a silent ache, a suspicion that something essential is missing. This is the paradox of modern life. Never before has humanity had so much comfort, convenience and security, and yet never before have so many felt so unfulfilled. Isn't that strange? How can true happiness remain elusive in a world overflowing with abundance? You scroll through your phone, seeing curated images of people smiling, laughing, posing in exotic places. You know rationally that these are staged moments, fragments of reality polished for display, and yet some part of you believes them. Why do they look so happy when I feel so empty? The question burrows deeper. What's wrong with me? But here lies the first unsettling truth. Maybe nothing is wrong with you. Maybe the entire idea of happiness, as you've been taught to understand it, is a carefully woven illusion. Pause here. Consider the absurdity. From childhood, you've been told happiness is the ultimate goal. Stories end with happily ever after, as if happiness is a destination, a permanent state you reach once you've checked the right boxes. You're taught to believe that if you study hard, earn well, find the right partner, and accumulate enough comfort, happiness will naturally follow. Yet countless people who achieve all these things find themselves staring at the ceiling at night, wondering why they still feel restless. What if happiness, as we imagine it, doesn't actually exist in the way we've been promised? What if true happiness is not only rare, but deliberately kept out of reach? Carl Jung once suggested that people will do anything, no matter how absurd, to avoid confronting their own souls. Could it be that the happiness we chase is not real joy but distraction? What if society has trained us to pursue pleasure, validation and success precisely so we never ask the deeper, more dangerous questions? Think of it this way. You're chasing a horizon. Every time you move closer, it retreats. You buy something new, you feel a rush, but within days the feeling fades. You get a promotion. A thrill surges through you, but it evaporates as quickly as it arrived. Isn't this eerily similar to addiction? A cycle of anticipation, fulfillment, and emptiness, repeated endlessly. And so you start to wonder, if happiness is real, why does it always slip away? Why is it so fragile, so temporary? This is where the great question emerges, the one we rarely dare to ask. What if the very idea of happiness we've been sold is not just unattainable, but a lie designed to keep us forever dissatisfied? Because dissatisfaction is profitable. Industries thrive when you feel incomplete. Entire economies are built on your restless hunger. If you were truly content, would you consume so much, compete so fiercely, or work yourself into exhaustion? Sit with this paradox. Happiness is presented as your highest goal, but every system around you benefits from keeping it out of your grasp, and this realization is deeply unsettling. If true happiness has always been dangled just beyond your reach, what does that say about the life you're living now? About the dreams you've been chasing? About the promises you've trusted? These questions are not comfortable. They dig under your skin, unsettling the foundations of everything you've believed. And yet, isn't it better to confront them than to keep running blindly toward a finish line that never exists? So here you are, standing at the edge of a revelation. You can feel it. Something about happiness itself is broken. Something about the way you've been taught to understand it is keeping you trapped. The question now becomes why? Why is true happiness so elusive, so carefully hidden, so agonizingly out of reach for most people? And if we dare to dig deeper, into psychology, philosophy, and the very structure of society, we might uncover not only the roots of this problem, but also the haunting cost of never seeing it for what it truly is. You've felt the weight, the paradox, abundance everywhere but happiness nowhere. Now we must pull back the curtain and expose why true happiness seems forever out of reach. The reasons are not superficial. They cut deep into psychology, philosophy, and the very architecture of society itself. The psychological trap. From the earliest days of your life, you were conditioned to tie happiness to external conditions. Think back to childhood. You were praised when you performed well, scolded when you failed. You learned that love and approval were not unconditional, but contingent upon behavior. Slowly your brain wired itself to believe that happiness must be earned, not experienced. This conditioning is powerful. By the time you become an adult, happiness is no longer a simple presence of joy. It becomes a bargaining chip. You tell yourself, I'll be happy when I graduate. I'll be happy when I find the right partner. I'll be happy when I'm wealthy. Each milestone seems like a door to joy, yet when you cross it, the door leads to another corridor of striving. Psychologists call this the hedonic treadmill. Whatever joy you feel quickly resets, and you return to baseline. Like a hamster running endlessly in its wheel, you chase happiness without ever arriving. This cycle is not a personal failure. It is built into the very structure of your psyche. Carl Jung argued that modern humans suffer most from meaninglessness, not from lack of resources. And meaning cannot be bought, achieved, or bestowed. It must be discovered within. Yet our conditioning convinces us otherwise, pushing us further and further from the source. The philosophical blindness. Philosophers have wrestled with the nature of happiness for centuries. Aristotle spoke of eudaimonia, a form of flourishing tied not to pleasure but to virtue, purpose, and alignment with one's essence. Contrast this with the modern obsession with instant gratification, pleasure, and status. We confuse fleeting comfort with enduring fulfillment. Arthur Schopenhauer went further, suggesting that life itself is structured around suffering. For him, desire is endless striving. Satisfaction is merely a pause in the cycle. To seek permanent happiness, therefore, is like trying to grasp smoke. Perhaps happiness eludes us not because we are failing, but because our very concept of it is flawed. Nietzsche, with his piercing critique of modern values, warned against the herd morality that dictates what we should pursue. He argued that most people do not create their own definition of happiness, but inherit one ready-made: wealth, respectability, security. In chasing this borrowed definition, we betray ourselves. True happiness, Nietzsche suggested, requires the courage to forge one's own path, even at the cost of comfort. Jean-Paul Sartre echoed this in his idea of bad faith, living inauthentically by conforming to roles society imposes. Imagine wearing a mask so long that you forget your face beneath it. Many live this way, mistaking conformity for success and external approval for joy. Yet deep within, the dissonance grows. The social illusion, the problem, runs deeper still. Happiness is not only a personal pursuit, it is manipulated, distorted, and sold to you by society. Look closely, and you'll see that the systems you live in profit from your dissatisfaction. Aldous Huxley's Brave New World painted a chilling portrait of a society kept docile not through oppression, but through pleasure. People were distracted with entertainment, shallow satisfaction, and endless consumption. Isn't that strikingly familiar? Advertisements promise happiness in exchange for products. Social media offers validation in the form of likes. Success is framed as proof of your worth. And through it all, the deeper void is ignored. Why? Because a content human being does not fuel an economy built on endless consumption. If you were truly happy, would you need to buy so much? Would you need to prove yourself constantly? Your dissatisfaction drives industries. It keeps you scrolling, shopping, striving. It is not an accident that true happiness is out of reach. It is a design, the wound beneath the mask. But even beneath this cultural machine, there is something older, more personal, the wound of unworthiness. Gabor Maté points out that so many of our addictions and compulsions, workaholism, consumerism, validation-seeking, stem from trauma, from the early experience of not feeling loved simply for existing. Happiness becomes the mask you wear to hide your wound. You tell yourself, if I achieve enough, if I prove enough, if I shine enough, maybe I'll finally be enough. But the mask never fits. Because happiness sought as proof of worth is never real happiness. It is compensation. And so, generation after generation, people live with a subtle ache, chasing a promise that cannot be fulfilled. They perform roles, chase goals, and mimic smiles, all while suppressing the quiet voice that whispers, "This isn't it." This was never it. The growing tension. At this point, the problem sharpens into focus. True happiness remains out of reach because we are taught to look for it everywhere, but within. We confuse pleasure with meaning, validation with love, distraction with joy. Our conditioning, our society, even our deepest wounds conspire to keep us chasing shadows. But do you feel the tension building? Once you see the lie, you cannot unsee it, and yet you still feel trapped. If happiness is not in success, not in consumption, not in validation. Where is it? The unsettling answer is that most people never find out because they never dare to step outside the illusion. They keep running, chasing, consuming, comparing until their last breath. And the great tragedy is not merely that they miss happiness, but that they never even questioned the script they were handed. So here you stand, holding the truth like a dangerous flame. The happiness you've been promised is a mirage. The roots of this problem are tangled in psychology, philosophy, and society itself. But if this is true, if the problem is so deeply entrenched, what does it mean for your life? What are the costs of continuing on this path? Picture yourself standing at the base of a massive machine. Its gears are enormous, grinding relentlessly, pulling you along whether you resist or not. The machine hums with familiar promises. Work harder, buy more, achieve bigger. Then you'll be happy. You've been walking inside its rhythm for so long that it feels natural. But what if you dared to step aside? What if, for the first time, you stopped obeying its commands? That moment, when you pause, when you resist, when you question, is the beginning of rebellion. Step 1. Dismantling the illusion. The first act of rebellion is brutally simple yet terrifyingly difficult. Admit that the story you've been told about happiness is a lie. This requires courage, because to see the lie means dismantling the very framework that has guided your life. But until you do, you remain chained. Nietzsche warned that the herd lives comfortably in illusions, but those who dare to confront reality often feel alienated. True rebellion begins when you no longer outsource your definition of happiness to culture, advertising, or comparison. When you declare, "I will not chase what others tell me to chase. I will seek what is real, even if it terrifies me," this act alone breaks the spell. Suddenly you are not running blindly with the crowd. You have stepped into awareness. Step 2. Redefining success. If happiness cannot be bought or measured, then what does it mean to live well? Here philosophy and psychology converge on a radical truth. Fulfillment comes not from what you have, but from how you live. Aristotle's eudaimonia, a life of flourishing, was not about fleeting pleasure, but about aligning with one's true nature, living virtuously, cultivating wisdom and serving something larger than oneself. Carl Jung spoke of individuation, integrating the shadow and becoming whole. Viktor Frankl discovered in the camps that meaning, not pleasure, sustains us in suffering. To redefine success is to move from possession to being. Success is not the applause you gather, but the authenticity you embody. Not how much you accumulate, but how deeply you live. Not how high you climb, but how true you remain. Ask yourself, if the world never applauded me again, what would still feel worth doing? That answer is the seed of your rebellion. Step 3. Embracing failure. Society conditions you to fear failure because it threatens the illusion of constant progress. But failure, paradoxically, is liberation. When you fail by the world's standards, the prison doors crack open. You no longer have to maintain the facade. You are forced to confront who you are when the applause is gone. Sartre would call this the moment of freedom, the collapse of false roles, the chance to live authentically. Rebellion means not avoiding failure, but embracing it as a teacher. Failure whispers, you are not your trophies. You are not your titles. You are more than this performance. What if every failure you dread is actually an invitation to step outside the machine and discover your real self? Step 4. Choosing presence. The lie of happiness thrives on distraction, always pointing you to the next achievement, the next purchase, the next comparison. To rebel is to reclaim the present moment. This requires stillness, silence, practices that slow the frantic rhythm of the machine, meditation, walking in nature, journaling, deep conversation. These are not indulgences. They are weapons of rebellion. They allow you to hear your own voice beneath the noise. Presence is radical because it teaches you that joy exists here now, not at the end of some future goal. Imagine the power of tasting happiness, not as a distant prize but as a daily practice. Step 5. Living for meaning, not metrics. The culture of success worships metrics, money, likes, followers, grades, titles. But rebellion means shifting from metrics to meaning. Ask not how many noticed me, but was what I did meaningful? Did it align with my values? Did it touch another soul? Frankl showed that meaning can be found even in suffering, especially in suffering, when you orient yourself toward purpose. Meaning does not need applause to exist. It is quiet, steady, enduring, and once you orient your life toward it, you are no longer so easily manipulated. Step 6. Accepting contradiction. To live in rebellion is to accept that life is not neat, that happiness will never be permanent, that joy and sorrow dance together in every human story. The lie sells permanence. The truth embraces impermanence. Nietzsche's amor fati, the love of fate, asks you to love not only the joys but also the pains of life. To say yes to existence in all its chaos, beauty, and suffering. This is not resignation, it is empowerment. When you no longer resist life's contradictions, you no longer fear them. And in that fearlessness, a strange freedom emerges, the shape of rebellion. What does rebellion look like in practice? It might mean walking away from a career that suffocates you, even if others call you foolish. It might mean prioritizing relationships over promotions. It might mean creating art that no one applauds but which keeps your soul alive. It might mean living simply in a world obsessed with excess. Each act of authenticity chips away at the machine's illusion. Each step toward meaning frees you from comparison. Each moment of presence reclaims your life as your own. The rising courage, of course, rebellion is not without cost. You may lose approval. You may feel lonely. You may stumble as you learn to live by your own compass. But what is the alternative? To spend your life trapped in illusions, chasing happiness that never arrives? To die with regret gnawing at your heart? Rebellion may be painful, but it is the pain of birth, not of decay. It is the labor of becoming who you truly are. And yet even rebellion is not the final word. It sets you free, yes, but freedom alone is not enough. For once you step outside the machine, once you redefine success, once you embrace failure and presence, there remains one last, most powerful realization, a truth so profound that it does not merely free you from illusions, but redefines what it means to live at all. Stand still for a moment and look around. Everyone is chasing something. Jobs, promotions, recognition, wealth, followers, the next upgrade. The air is thick with movement, noise, and urgency. Yet beneath this collective chase lies a quiet but devastating truth. The more we run after happiness in the ways we've been taught, the further away it slips. The consequences of this illusion are not abstract. They seep into every corner of our lives, shaping who we are, how we relate to others, and even how society itself functions. The hollow self, when happiness is tied to conditions, success, approval, possessions, you begin to treat yourself not as a being but as a project. Your value feels conditional. You are worthy only if you achieve, only if you produce, only if you maintain the image of being successful. This erodes your sense of identity. You no longer ask, "Who am I?" Instead you ask, "Am I good enough?" And the answer depends on metrics you never chose. Grades, salaries, social status, numbers on a screen. Failure in any of these areas does not feel like a setback. It feels like proof that you at your core are not enough. Psychologists call this contingent self-worth, and it is poison to the soul. It breeds perfectionism, anxiety, and depression. It makes every stumble unbearable, every rejection catastrophic. Even success feels fragile, because you know it could be taken away. You live in constant fear of falling behind, trapped in a cycle of striving and self-doubt. The addiction to more neuroscience has shown us that the brain adapts quickly to rewards. Dopamine surges when you anticipate a reward, money, recognition, love. But once the reward is obtained, the chemical high fades rapidly. This is the cruel irony. The pleasure lies more in the chase than in the attainment. And so you are driven to seek more, always more. This is the hedonic treadmill in action. No matter how much you gain, it never feels like enough. And because society reinforces this endlessly, get richer, look younger, achieve bigger, you internalize the belief that the solution to dissatisfaction is always just beyond the next horizon. But what kind of life does this produce? One of perpetual restlessness. One where satisfaction is always delayed, always conditional, always temporary. One where you mistake busyness for purpose and consumption for joy. The erosion of relationships, the lie of happiness doesn't just wound you, it distorts your connections with others. If your worth depends on success, then others become mirrors reflecting your adequacy or your inadequacy. You compare yourself constantly, measuring your value against their achievements. Envy poisons friendships. Competition corrodes collaboration. Even love becomes transactional. You might pursue relationships for status, validation, or the illusion of completion, rather than for authentic connection. Partners become trophies, children become proof of legacy, friends become networks. The raw intimacy of human connection, the simple joy of being seen and known, gets buried under the weight of performance. And when relationships inevitably crack under this pressure, the loneliness that follows feels unbearable. You try to numb it with distractions, but the emptiness only grows. The cultural mirage zoom out further, and you see how entire societies bend under this illusion. Education systems emphasize grades and performance over curiosity and wisdom. Children are trained to compete, to accumulate, to strive, not to explore meaning, not to discover who they are. Workplaces glorify overwork, rewarding those who sacrifice health and relationships for productivity. Success is measured in profits and growth, even when these come at the expense of human well-being and ecological survival. The culture of achievement becomes a culture of exploitation, of self, of others, of the planet. And through it all, media fuels the fire. Advertisements whisper, "You'll be happy when you buy this." Social platforms whisper, "You'll be happy when they like you." The culture becomes a hall of mirrors, each reflection promising joy but delivering only fleeting satisfaction. Is it any wonder, then, that rates of anxiety, depression, and loneliness are skyrocketing in the wealthiest nations? That, despite material abundance, despair gnaws at the edges of people's lives. The unseen consequence is not merely dissatisfaction, it is a collective spiritual crisis, the quiet despair. This crisis often manifests in silence. Outwardly, people appear successful, smiling, busy, but behind closed doors, many are haunted by a gnawing emptiness. They confess it only in moments of vulnerability, or they suppress it until it erupts as burnout, breakdown, or addiction. Fyodor Dostoevsky once wrote that man is the creature who can get used to anything. And so tragically, many learn to tolerate this quiet despair. They numb it with entertainment, with substances, with endless scrolling. They tell themselves it's normal, that everyone feels this way, that happiness must simply be elusive. And so the lie continues unchallenged, but the cost is immense. For what could be more tragic than living an entire life chasing happiness, only to arrive at the end and realize you never truly lived? The cliff's edge. Imagine yourself old, standing at the end of your life, reflecting on the decades gone by. You've worked hard, achieved much, maybe even gained the admiration of others. But as you look back, you feel a quiet dread. Did I spend my life chasing the wrong things? Did I mistake success for meaning, distraction for joy, survival for living? This is the greatest unseen consequence, not just individual dissatisfaction, but the possibility of existential regret. To succeed by society's standards, but fail by your own soul's measure. To reach the summit of the wrong mountain, and so the question sharpens, if the roots of our unhappiness lie in conditioning, philosophy, and culture, and if the consequences corrode our souls, our relationships, and our society, then what can be done? Is rebellion even possible? Is there a way to break free from this prison, or are we doomed to keep running in circles until the end? The answer is not easy, and it is not comfortable. But rebellion is possible, and it begins not with adding more, but with stripping away the illusions we have clung to. Imagine standing on the other side of the chase. You have stepped off the treadmill. You have broken from the machine. You have dared to redefine success and reclaim your life. And now, in the quiet space that follows, a question arises like a thunderclap in your chest. If happiness is not what I was taught, if it cannot be bought, measured, or achieved, then what is it? This is the final and most dangerous question, because the answer shatters not just the illusion of happiness, but the illusion of life itself, the shattering of the old vision. For so long, happiness was imagined as a permanent state, a kind of eternal summer where the sun never sets. But reality tells a different story. Every joy fades, every pleasure passes, every success loses its shine. If happiness means unbroken bliss, then yes, it is out of reach, not just for most people, but for all people. And yet, paradoxically, the moment you stop demanding permanence, something shifts. You begin to notice the fleeting, fragile, incandescent moments that had always been there. Laughter shared with a friend, the stillness of a sunset, the quiet satisfaction of work done with integrity. Happiness is not the fortress you were promised. It is the flicker of a flame, fragile but real. To demand that flame to burn forever is to snuff it out. To embrace its impermanence is to finally see its beauty. From happiness to meaning, here lies the ultimate realization. The pursuit of happiness has always been misguided, because happiness was never meant to be the goal. The deeper aim, the one philosophers and psychologists whisper across centuries, is meaning. Viktor Frankl discovered this truth in the most brutal conditions imaginable. Stripped of everything, he observed that those who survived were not the ones who clung to pleasure, but the ones who found meaning, even in suffering. Those who have a why can bear almost any how, he wrote. Meaning does not fade like pleasure. It does not depend on applause or recognition. It anchors you in the storm, turning even pain into something bearable, even beautiful. When you live for meaning, happiness ceases to be a goal and becomes a companion, an echo that arises naturally when your life aligns with your deepest truth. The redefinition of freedom, too, transforms in this light. You once believed freedom meant the absence of constraint, the power to do whatever you wished. But true freedom is something deeper. It is the freedom to affirm life as it is. Nietzsche's amor fati, the love of fate, is the call to embrace every moment. Not just the joys but the sorrows, not just the triumphs but the losses, to say yes to existence in its entirety. In this radical acceptance, happiness is no longer fragile because it no longer depends on conditions. You are not happy because life is easy. You are happy because you have learned to love life as it is. The sacredness of the ordinary, think. Of all the moments you once dismissed as trivial because they did not advance you towards success, the quiet walk, the shared silence, the warmth of morning light across your face. In the lie of happiness, these were distractions from the chase. In the truth, they are life itself. Happiness is not waiting at the mountaintop. It is scattered along the path, hidden in plain sight. To live authentically is to notice it, to cherish it, to let it be enough. This is why true happiness felt out of reach for so long, because it was never where you were told to look. It was never in the trophies, the applause, or the comparisons. It was here all along, in the raw, fleeting moments of being alive, the final paradox. And here is the paradox that completes the circle. The less you chase happiness, the more it appears. When you stop clutching at it, when you stop demanding it fulfill an illusion, it arises naturally, like a shy bird landing on your shoulder when you are still. The chase killed happiness. The surrender restores it. A cinematic ending, so imagine this. You are no longer running. You are no longer measuring your worth against others or bargaining with yourself for joy. You are sitting quietly, perhaps on a porch, watching the day fade into night. There is nothing extraordinary happening, no achievements, no applause, and yet a stillness fills you, a quiet recognition. This moment is enough. I am enough, that is the ultimate truth. Happiness is not a prize to be won, but a presence to be noticed. Not a destination, but a way of walking. Not something outside of you, but something that has been within you all along. You realize now that the tragedy was never that happiness was unreachable. It was that you were too busy, chasing illusions to notice it blooming quietly in the spaces of your life. And so, you stand at the end of this journey, not with a map to permanent bliss, but with something far greater, the courage to live authentically, to embrace meaning, to affirm existence, to love fate, and in that courage, true happiness, fragile, fleeting, yet profoundly real, finally reveals itself. The last word, so here is the revelation, the final unshakable truth. True happiness is not out of reach. It is out of view, hidden behind the illusions we were taught to chase. Once you strip those illusions away, once you dare to live meaningfully, you discover it was never missing. It was waiting for you, in every ordinary, unrepeatable moment of your life.